Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in Radio Land, and welcome to tonight's edition of the discussion on a topic of interest, local topic of interest, or topic of local interest by the St. Kitts National Men's Council. I am Michael Blake. I was not here the last couple of sessions, but I'm glad to be back here with you this evening. I should be joined in quick time by one or two other members of the council. And tonight, we want to talk about Christmas. Of course, at this time of the year, here in St. Kitts and throughout the Western world and beyond, it is normal and natural for people to greet one another with the exclamation, Merry Christmas. And of course, on December the 25th, we celebrate so-called Christmas Day. We were born meeting it like that. It's been like that for eons, and you don't see it changing any time before Christ himself returns. So we want to share with you tonight some ideas about the origins, myths, and contradictions of Christmas. I am one of those, for example, who know. I'm one of those who know that December 25th is not the birth date of Jesus Christ. I think a lot of us accept that. We are fully aware that it is not environmentally, climatically possible for Jesus Christ to have been born on December 25th in the area or the region in which he was born. This is one of the things that bothers me, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. If we know, and I submit that a lot of us know, and I believe every single pastor, because some pastors really are ignorant of a lot of things. They are master ignoramuses. But I believe a lot of pastors, heads of churches, leaders of religious groups, in St. Kitts and beyond, I believe that they very well know that December the 25th is not and cannot be the birth date of Jesus Christ. So the question is, of course, why do they proceed in not only recognizing and observing it, but celebrating it in the way they do? That is a question that has bothered me for years. If the leaders know, we like to say that people operate within the ambit of the knowledge that they have. And people change their attitudes and change their behavior and change their outlook, sometimes their very values and tastes, as new information comes to the fore. So if these pastors and these church leaders know that December the 25th cannot be the birth date of Jesus Christ, why do they insist for years on end on behaving as though it is a historical fact? The same can very well be said of Easter. We say that Jesus Christ died and was crucified and was buried on the Friday, and that he was already risen by the time Mary and others got to the tomb on Sunday morning. Which is ridiculous, which is impossible. Because the man himself, Jesus Christ, he made it clear he would be in the earth, he'd be dead and buried for 3 days and 3 nights. And no matter how you stretch it, no matter how much modern math you use, no matter what algorithm you employ, you cannot find 3 days and 3 nights between Friday evening at that and Sunday morning. It's just not possible. But yet, year after year, Easter is a big thing next to Christmas in most cases. And they insist on following that folly. If Jesus Christ died and was buried on a Friday, he could not have been risen on a Sunday morning. And if he was risen on a Sunday morning, he could not have died and was buried on a Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, the basic, the most elemental and fundamental, the most rudimentary of computation tells us that you cannot have 3 days and 3 nights between Good Friday, so-called, and Easter Sunday. It is not possible. But yet, for eons, we were born into churches carrying on as though that is correct. And I guess Jesus Christ will come back still meeting them in that folly. The same applies to Christmas. I believe that most, as I said earlier, I believe that most religious leaders know, they are aware that Jesus Christ was not born on December 25th. So why do they insist on doing that? That is a question I'd like to ask one of them. I heard one of them say, and a lot of them like to say, well, the fact that he was born, and so we celebrate it. Which is a fallacious argument, ladies and gentlemen. And I tell you why it's a ridiculous argument, not even a sophisticated argument. It's a nonsensical argument. Or the fact that he was born. They don't celebrate December the 25th because they believe that Christ was born. They know that he wasn't born on that day. They simply follow it because it's tradition. It is tradition. So if they want to go to certain African countries, for example, they will fully support the idea of female genital mutilation because it's tradition in those societies. In spite of irrefragable evidence that it is dangerous, it is unhealthy, it serves no useful purpose, it is wrong on that. But according to these pastors, because, well, it's been happening anyway. The fact is that it happens. So, because Christ would have been born, via a miraculous birth, according to the record that we are familiar with, and sometimes I wonder if that is accurate. Because we know or accept that he was born, means that we must accept December the 25th as the date of that birth, when we know for a fact that it is not so, because it is not possible. So I'm going to give you some basic information as to why December the 25th is not the birth date of Jesus Christ, why it cannot be the birth date of Jesus Christ, and then I really wish that I could have some feedback from you, a discussion as it were, for you to discuss with me and tell me why you think we still insist on using December the 25th. Why not June the 10th? Why not May the 14th? Why not November the 1st? We accept December the 25th for this reason. Before Jesus Christ came to the earth, and remember Jesus Christ came and met civilizations already existing. He came and met people when he was born 2025 years ago, because our years are numbered from his birth. Right? There's no year zero. Year one was the first year of Jesus' birth. That is why in Christian societies and in many Western countries we have the year now 2025. In some other countries, I hope you're aware, their year is not 2025 because they follow a different calendar. Alright? They follow a different calendar. Their years, in most cases, are not 2025, but a more recent year. So their year might very well be the year 1600 and something, or 1700 and something. But, of course, we all live in the same world. Whether we say today is this year is 2025, or 1625, or 2925, we all here at the same time. But before Jesus Christ came to earth, the Roman Empire, the ancient Roman Empire, used to celebrate what was called Saturnalia. Mankind has always been celebrating. Even in the Old Testament, we read of a lot of celebrations. We read a lot of feasts that Almighty God himself has dictated that his children follow and obey. When I learned about the need for the Feast of Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles, among others, I endeavored to find groups of people who follow those holy days. Nothing about Christmas, of course. Absolutely nothing about Christmas in the Bible. I've been coming to that. But the Holy Roman Empire, which was the dominant power at the time, celebrated Saturnalia. The Venerable Day of the Sun in particular was celebrated on December the 25th. I don't know why that date was chosen, but that is the date they used. Now, when Emperor Constantine, who assumed the emperorship, the leadership of that same Roman Empire, he converted, as it were, to Christianity. And so he being the leader, and in those days, those guys were powerful, far more powerful than emperors or prime ministers or kings today. And they ruled over vast areas of territory. He decided that his subordinates, his subjects is the word I want, his subjects were now free to practice their Christian beliefs. And because they were already accustomed to Saturnalia festivities in December, and because the emperor and Christian leaders wanted to encourage pagan worshippers, non-believers, to accept Christianity, they recognized, they felt in their considered, quote-unquote, opinion, that if they were to abandon the big, massive celebration that they were accustomed to on December the 25th, which is what they should have done, that it would create problems, and a lot of pagans would still want to celebrate that occasion. So they made a compromise, and they kept December the 25th. And instead of now celebrating it as the venerable day of the SUN, they decided it would be celebrated as the birthday of the SON of God. That's what happened in the year AD 280, I think it was. So this even happened after Jesus Christ had already ascended to earth. Ascended to heaven, sorry. After he had been resurrected and ascended to heaven. Emperor Constantine made the decree in his kingdom, in his empire, that December the 25th, supported by Christian leaders, including all the religious leaders, that December the 25th will now be celebrated as the birthday of Jesus the Christ. And to this day, it has stuck. I have been joined by Brother Agad. I will pause here for him to say a few words, and if I get a chance, I'll come back.
Yeah, blessed greetings all, we give thanks. But I'm just gonna go straight in a sense for this pause. I don't agree that the leaders of the churches and the pastors them are aware of what you think they are aware of. I think you're giving them too much credit, because a lot of them actually don't study anything. They are repeating what they hear. So they have heard these things. It's on, you go on YouTube. There's this guy actually on Facebook right now who is actually he says he's an apologetic apologist, whatever they call themselves, and he's now defending the Christmas tree. He's actually also defending the Christmas story, and he used the word researchers to pump up his ego and arrogance,
Yeah,
to make it sound like,
give some legitimacy,
yeah, to what he's saying.
His folly,
Yeah. Now Jeremiah 10 spoke about an issue there.
Spoke or speaks?
Well, God told Jeremiah,
so he speaks to that,
right, to tell the children of Israel, do not follow the ways of the heathens.
right?
For they go to the forest, they cut tree out, and they put it up and decorate it with silver and gold and what's not. Of course, Jeremiah is not saying Christmas tree. There was no such a name. But if you have in 2025 and whenever that started.
So that pastor is bringing up that?
Yeah, he's actually saying, Jeremiah wasn't talking about the Christmas tree. He was, Jeremiah at that time was going through whatever. I guess he missed the part that says, and the Lord told Jeremiah. These were not Jeremiah's own words.
Right.
These were the words of the Most High telling Jeremiah, tell the people to not do this type of thing.
Right.
Decorating a tree.
Yeah.
Because we could see the whole theme of the Bible was that God showing them, I'm the one and true living God. I'm the one looking after you. And I'm a jealous God, which means worship me. Do the things for me.
Right.
So now you're going to take a creature, a created plant, decorating the plant, have no connection at all to any commandment. And remember also, in the commandments he said, make no graven images of anything in the heavens. So which means anything to do with worship. You should have no figurehead, nothing that you make up or anything like that. But the guy gone off and, through he's a scholar and studying and all that, he make a good presentation. And if you look down in the comments, the amount of people like, oh yes, preach it, brother, and basically agreeing with what he's saying.
Yeah.
One person said, you're saying all that, but at the end of it, the people are still doing basically the same thing Jeremiah told them not to do.
Yeah, but I'm reminded that Jim Jones, back in the 1970s, he would tell his followers that the Lord, all of them said the Lord said, that he should have sex with both men and women. as a form of initiation before they can become members of his church.
Which he was doing.
And he did, of course. And I guess he did with children too. He and many other leaders, David Koresh, the Davidian sect and so on, they tell their leaders, they tell their followers. Well, the same thing, the Pope and the Catholic leaders used to tell the followers who couldn't read the Latin Vulgate in which the Bible was written, that God said you must pay money in order to get your sins
Right.
forgiven and so on.
Pray out of purgatory, like if somebody died for you,
Yeah.
they could pay, you pay, and they could pray the person
Exactly.
out of purgatory and
Right.
into heaven and all kind of nonsense.
Okay. So that is not a new phenomenon, right? The pastors like to say that God said,
Yeah.
right? Which is interesting because one pastor said that God says one thing, and another pastor says something antithetical,
Yeah.
the very opposite, and also claims that God says.
Yes, so the question comes, when they say God says, we does assume they mean the God of the Bible. Because we assuming that.
Yeah.
Because they cannot mean the God of the Bible when the God of the Bible is not, because the Bible is not a book to interpret. It's a book that reveals whatever it is that need to be revealed to you. When you start to interpret, then confusion come. Because as you just said, God said, and then the next man said, God said. And he comes all down to what the interpretation was. It.
Right, yeah.
What voice did God use to say that to you?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you have all these strange things happening, but I'm putting it to you in speaking with, and this is what we are dealing with here now is more of a Western issue, right? It's more of a Western issue. You might be creeping into the East, because the Western somehow seem to shine some kind of weird light, and the people like to follow them.
Yeah.
You know, but the idea of Christmas tree, the idea of Christ born December the 25th, I'm putting it to you that a lot of pastors don't know otherwise.
Okay. That's interesting. I agree with you that, of course, a lot of pastors as leaders, just like a lot of teachers, imagine that. Don't read,
Yeah,
don't study, don't analyze, don't think for themselves.
yeah.
It's just a shame, but that's the reality. So at the point of Saturnalia, ladies and gentlemen, that ancient Roman celebration, it was characterized by a lot of giving and feasting, characteristics which have continued even in the new dispensation. All right? It was a time when there was a lot of pagan revelry. Does that ring a bell? Because that is what we have now, today. And that period was chosen, the Saturnalia, December the 25th, to coincide with existing midwinter festivals. I don't know how many pastors are aware of when the winter season begins, and that December the 25th is in the center of that period, the middle, as it were, of the winter season. And so that is the beginning of Christianity, of Christmas, and how it was chosen. But let's look at some other realities, brothers and sisters, why Christ could not have been born on December the 25th. And bear in mind, we want to know if pastors do know, and Brother Agar just insisted that most pastors do not know, because they don't take the time out to study or read, and we hear them on the pulpits sometimes talking, pure nonsense. If they were in my classes, there's a lot of 6 lashes they'll be getting, because I used to discourage my students from talking nonsense, and foolishness. But the Bible makes it clear, and so the Bible gives us clues. That's why Christ was born on December 25th. So why did the pastors insist on it? It says there were shepherds abiding in the fields at night. Ladies and gentlemen, in that area where Christ was born, in the Middle East, in Israel, in Bethlehem, it's a place where there is snow on the ground during this period of time. Now you tell me, which shepherd in his right mind is going to have sheep out in the fields in the middle of the night on a cold winter's night? And we sing that too, on a cold winter's night. What are the sheep going to eat? What are the sheep going to eat? Are they going to eat snow? Who is going to keep them warm? Is the shepherd going to have blankets for the hundreds of sheep that he has out there? How are they going to navigate this now in terms of walking from the fields to their abode? It is not possible. It makes no sense. So that very fact, stated in the Bible itself, tells us that Christ could not have been born on December 25th. Because that's in the midwinter. Extremely cold. Shepherds today, as then, do not keep their sheep out in the cold. They bring them in from the cold. So I want to make that clear. Then, of course, another very important point. We are told in the Bible specifically, to celebrate the death of Christ by taking symbols of his blood and flesh, his body. So we celebrate his death that way. I want somebody to tell me. I'll give them all the money that Brother Berry who just came in has. I'll give them all the money that Brother Berry has if they could point me to the Bible where we are instructed to celebrate his birth, the birth of the Christ. Even if we were to accept, which we can, that it was December the 25th. So for argument's sake, let's say December the 25th. Where in the Holy Bible of God are we told, even indirectly, to celebrate his birth date? We're not. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, at no point from Genesis to Revelation, or from Genesis to Malachi, from Matthew to Revelation, neither Peter, Paul, John, James, Timothy, Moses, none of the writers of the Bible, not even people like Isaiah, who foretold his coming and so on, spoke of celebrating the birthday of the Christ. So why do we do it? Why do the pastors insist on doing it? That's point number 2. He couldn't have been born on that date. And even if he were, we are not instructed to celebrate it. Point number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, even if we were to celebrate the birthday of Christ, the way we do it, do you really think that's the correct way? Do you think that Almighty God in heaven smiles at us as followers of Christ, as his children, if we choose to celebrate the birthday of Christ the way we do? I mean, Brother God was just talking about the paganism of the Christmas tree. Well, Santa Claus is a big thing about Christmas, a big feature of Christmas. Are we aware of the origin of Santa Claus? I mean, let me give you a quick idea.
Before you go into that, Blake,
Sure.
you see, the whole Christmas season festival, so to call it, have a lot of layers, right? And you mentioned a few of them. So it's like to have the conversation about Christmas and the church. One would assume. Well, let me roll back the part about church, because church is something totally different. Church is something totally different to what we think it is.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, the Christian community in the West, we could see that almost everything that they celebrate and do is not aligned with the Bible. So it's quite obvious that when they say God is not the God of the Bible, it's obvious when they do things is not based on instructions. As a matter of fact, the Bible make it clear that sin, as definition in the Bible, is the transgression of the law. Right? The Christian people tell you there is no law since Christ. But yet Christ himself, when they asked Christ, which is the greatest commandment, he never went to the 10 commandments that they only speak about. Now, most of these Christian people in the West think there's only 10 commandments. It's 613 commandments in the Bible. Right? When Jesus was asked which is the greatest, he didn't use any from the 10 that they normally speak about. He said 2 of them, that is, love your neighbor as yourself, that's not in the 10.
Mhm.
He said, love the Almighty with all of your substance, all your heart, all your mind, all your strength. That's also not in the 10.
Well, in those words. But I think
No, it's not in the 10 at all.
okay.
But
No,
these are other commandments.
Mhm.
So the when the youngster asked him, for instance, which commandment, because I told him if you want to enter into eternal life, do the commandments. The youngster asked him which commandments. He laid out 6 commandments. And out of the 6, I think 5 of them were of the 10, but he also bring one that was not of the 10. So it's more than 10 commandments. I'm just saying that because most of the Western Christian people do not believe in commandments. So God tell them not to eat certain things. They decide they're gonna eat them anyway because for some reason Paul, who was a very firm believer in the Torah, who never play around with them kind of things, they want to say Paul give them okay. Paul is not Christ. Paul is not God. But they're saying Paul give them permission to eat pig and all them things.
But he doesn't.
And Paul never
He doesn't do that.
Paul don't. It's like, why would you take permission from somebody to eat pig when they themselves don't eat pig?
Yeah.
You know. So I'm just putting it to you that I think the reasoning towards the Christian community is not really so much to them because they're not in the Bible. They walk with the book. They probably say certain things out of the book, but they are not reflecting the book. A matter of fact, just to seal this with correctness, Christ said, "These are the signs that are gonna follow my followers. They're gonna put their hand on the sick and restore them to health.
Mhm.
They're gonna be able to take up serpents. You know,
not be hurt. Yeah.
And
so on.
right. So he also said that like if you have these things following you, now look at what the Western Christian community do in terms of say Christ do for them, or Christ help them get a job, a wife and a husband. Nothing at all connect this to the Bible, but yet these are the things that they believe in. Why? Because they're not ambitious enough spiritually to want to go up to that level, to what Christ said. These are the things that my followers gonna do. But because they're failing at that, they have to psych themselves up to believe or make it appear as if that they are believing in the God of the Bible when everything they do, you spoke about Easter briefly, but it's not just Easter, it's everything else.
Yeah, but
So-
I'm saying, I'm insisting that the leaders of the church, the so-called pastors and reverends and bishops and all,
They don't study.
apostles and whatever we have, the
They don't study.
why aren't they leading their flocks, their members in the right way? Why aren't they teaching them the correct things?
Blake, when you have
Why are they themselves misleading?
as the men council, we have been to many churches around the island.
Yeah.
Right? And we realize that these churches are filled up with women. Okay. The pastors and them up there preaching all kind of wrong things. And the women them down there clapping them and saying glory, hallelujah, and amen. Is in no way making the pastor feel like what he's saying is wrong. So he's going to be strengthened by that and continue to preach wrong stuff until maybe we sit down and have a conversation. Then they get uncomfortable because they think you're trying to attack them.
Yeah.
You know, we've experienced that. Right? So I'm saying that, yeah, the discussion about the Christmas thing could go towards them, but it means nothing to them because
Nothing.
they're going to continue to nothing you or I say, because I think Paul them preach greater words than we saying here tonight, right? Because I don't know, well, it's in 354 AD when Constantine officially had December the 25th as the celebration for the SON of God, right? And that's because he was involved also with the sun worship, as you were talking about earlier, and so on and so on. So you know how much Christmas tree TDC and Hospital them gonna sell?
Of course.
Because they believe in the festivity
But it's a
itself.
big thing in the US, for example, and Britain and Canada and so on.
But I think we got the ones in the Caribbean, you know why?
You think so?
Because we have a carnival mixing with it.
Well, not every country has that.
That's
Not
why I
every
say
country
that's why I say we have it the worst.
Oh, you mean say it?
Saying it's
Oh, I thought, okay.
because so
Yeah.
even
But I want to before I bring in Member Berry, who was just coming. earlier, ladies and gentlemen, who's going to intervene in a while, I also want to continue and complete
What you were saying?
the explanation about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Why all these things have nothing to do with Jesus the Christ, ladies and gentlemen. So we understand that he could not have been born in December. Even if he were, we are not told to celebrate it. And even if we were to celebrate it, it shouldn't be the way we do. Now let's talk about Santa Claus, because one teacher in the United States was fired for telling his students that Santa Claus is a myth. I think the child was 6 or 7, and the child cried for days. When he went home, his parents couldn't get him to settle down because teacher said Santa Claus doesn't exist now. And the child couldn't get over that, because the child, of course, having been immersed in this thinking and expecting Santa Claus. I mean, every year Santa Claus been bringing him toys. After a while, where's will to be starting? So it's it. But Santa Claus, ladies and gentlemen, was a man named a man named Nicholas, who was born in the year 280. The year 280 after Christ, the year 280 AD, or what we call the Common Era. Not BCE, before Christ era, or before the Common Era, but in the year 280 AD, that's when Santa Claus was born. And he had a habit. He was a Greek bishop, by the way. He was a Greek bishop while he was born in Turkey. And he had a way of giving. Some of us are like that today, and we don't wait for Christmas to give. We're natural givers. I mean, I remember the child, a guy named oh goodness, I forgot his name. He used to go around and get the children line up, and then he goes into a shop and he buys all kind of candy and jawbone breaker and what we used to call chewing gum, and he just spent money giving. He ended up in the garden home, which I think was unfair, having spent a lot of his sustenance giving us children, little boys, primary schoolers in McKnight and wherever, village and so on. Some people are just givers by nature, right? Nicholas was one of those. And so, the Romans decided that this is a good man to use, and again he was supported by other church leaders throughout the ages. It's a good man to use at Christmas time to complement the Saturnalia practice of feasting and giving gifts and exchanging presents and so on. And so they combined all of that into the so-called Christmas or birthday of Christ, the S-O-N festival. And Christian leaders over the years have just embraced this thing. Now, what the guy is suggesting that they're doing it unthinkingly and unknowingly. But I want to give some of them the benefit of the doubt and submit that some of them do know. And this is where my concern comes in, Brother Berry. Why do these pastors who know, because some of them must know, why do they insist on continuing celebrating December 25th as the birthday of the Christ, when they very well know, and perhaps some of them know better than I do, that it is not so? That is what I really would like to hear the audience discuss. And I'm sorry we're still not able to do that. I'm hoping that next year, 2026, Brother Leroy here will be able to enhance and improve his facility such that we can engage in live feedback and discussion. I'm very low to you.
It's no doubt that the 25th of December is not the birth date of the Lord Jesus Christ. I think there's no questioning about that. It's clear. You have mentioned that there's no way in the scripture where we are told to celebrate his birth.
We're nowhere in the historical record either, so it is historically inaccurate.
Yeah, so I don't think that I should try to defend those who do it and look for some.
Why do they do?
But they keep doing it because it has become tradition, and when something has become the norm, so something everybody accepts as common standard, the thing to do, everybody jumps on the bandwagon.
But it used to be common for homosexuals to hide and for the church to refuse homosexuals among them and give them leadership positions. But they no longer do that. So how is it that they're changing that tradition, but they're keeping the one about Christmas? So it's not just a matter of tradition. It has become beyond.
Well, some would tell you that the Christmas tradition is a good one. The spirit of giving, and they just said in the spirit of Christmas.
But why can't we have a spirit of
And-
giving and
Yeah.
not attach the birth of Christ to it?
That's just it. That is just it. Because remember what you see, Christmas is evolving because you said today we have Christ. We get Christmas, Christ's Mass. A Mass to the word Christmas comes from Christ's Mass. When you put it together, a service celebrating Christ.
No, but should they desecrating it, they may as well
So-
keep saying Christmas.
Well,
That doesn't mean Christ at all.
so if so, if you're looking at isn't it a good thing to celebrate Christ? Isn't it a good thing to?
We're not just celebrating Christ, we're celebrating the birth of Christ.
Right.
That's not
So
full.
I'm telling you the evolution today. Some people are telling you, well, it's Christ, we are celebrating.
So why is Christ only celebrated at Christmas time?
No, but to celebrate
At
Christ
December,
is not-
December time.
Right. Well, the thing is,
And is that the correct way? Are we told to celebrate Christ? Where is the injunction? Where is the admonition?
well,
Where is the order to
how,
celebrate
how, do
Christ?
you, how do you?
And to celebrate it in that way?
Where you spoke about his death, his burial, his resurrection. You spoke about his work, his atoning work, what he has done. We were told to remember him as often as you do it. You break the bread, you drink the cup. But so I'm saying to you, I am drink you drink
You break the bread because you eat the bread and you drink the wine. Or the
drink
liquid.
from the cup.
Right,
Okay.
now we're talking.
Well, when you say drink the cup,
I'm not going to accept that, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay.
And that's not even correct what you said.
But the
Right.
thing is, right? We the Christmas, right? It's not going to change because it's in fact I think remember Blake that it's going to we're gonna get steeper and deeper into it as a practice. So to say, well, why pastors are not seeing this, why are they not doing anything about it? I believe that some of them know, but because it has been allowed to, the practice has been worldwide, it's universal. Everybody's doing it, right? It's difficult, it's a challenge for them to say, well, because if you stop, you revolt against it, you know what's going to happen.
So these pastors then would have accepted slavery and might very well accept it if it were to return because, hey, it's entrenched. It's not only that it's legal, it's been happening for hundreds of years because it started, well, the slavery that we speak about started in the 1600s and continued for centuries. So you're saying that because the thing is entrenched in terms of as a practice, that the pastors who are supposed to be men of God, remember, who are supposed to study to show themselves approved, that they just accept it like that and that it's going to continue like that. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And you think that's a good thing?
No.
So you as an individual, how do you propose to help others to get away from a practice which in my mind Christ does not accept and Christ does not smile on?
We just continue to talk about it, share information like what we're doing in this particular forum, and let them know that this practice is not of God, it's not scriptural, it's not there's no way you can defend it, right? We continue to talk to them about it.
Remember, I got sorry to interrupt you, right? Do you think that the Pope, the current Pope Leo XIV, do you think that he is not aware? Do you think his predecessor or predecessors are not aware? Because you said you're convinced that a lot of them don't know. Do you think that the Pope in particular, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's the head of the Anglican Communion worldwide, where the Pope is head of the Catholic Church and so on, do you think that he's aware of these fallacies? That he's aware that December 25th is historically inaccurate, it is logically fallacious, and it is commonsensically ridiculous that Christ was born in December 25th? Do you think that that the various popes are aware or are not aware of that.
I think most of the heads in the Roman Catholic settings do know the historical truths
Right.
because they have been part of the evolution and the layers that actually brought the whole thing together now was what we call Christmas. It was fully, you could say, even though it's still evolving, but it was shaped more in the 19th century. But let me tell you why I think that they know and still do what they do. The popes of the Roman Catholic Church in 1049 AD basically broke away from the church that was established by the Messiah apostles. And when the Roman Catholic broke away, they are breaking away thinking that they're supposed to be the leaders of the whole church world. So whatever they normally use scripture like this. When Christ said, whatever you establish on earth, let it be so, basically. So they have the idea that they can do whatever they want because Christ has given them power and authority to do as they like. So this is why, remember earlier you say that you pray them and they think they could pray people from purgatory into heaven and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So they are
So Martin Luther railed against.
right. So they are deeply rooted in the idea that they are the vicar, because they do say this. They are the vicar of Christ. So they're the vicar of Christ, which means the powers that was given to the apostles by Christ, they think that that was transferred to them. And since it's transferred to them, anything that they bind on earth is bind, and whatever they loose on earth is loose. So these people, while they know the truth to these things, they still think they could continue into these weird things because they think they have the power to do so. And this is not the same thinking of the Western pastor thinking. This is the Pope them thinking, because they're the ones who basically came through the full evolution of what happened back then, and they're now giving birth to all these other churches that we see around us here today. Basically, it is. Yeah, I don't think they are ignorant to it.
Well, so what does that speak? What does that tell us about conscience? If they insist on having the biggest tree with the most lights, and some members of the men's council engage in lighting up as well. Eh?
Maybe do
I
it.
understand.
Maybe do it. Not eager for sure.
But yeah, I'm asking the question: what does it speak to about conscience? If they know the truth, but yet they insist on all these aspects: the Santa Claus, the mistletoe, the holly, the Christmas tree with all the tinsels and all the decoration.
All these have nothing to do with Christ. Let's say that.
So the question I'm getting
Of
to:
course.
why do they insist then?
Okay.
I'm saying, are you saying that they have no conscience? The Bible speaks about some people having their conscience seared with a hot iron.
Yes.
In other words, the conscience does not, because the kind of thing that some men do,
Mhm.
it really has to be they have no conscience. I call them aliens in human form, because I can't say what human being could do some of the things, like this vicious video we saw the other day of a grown man abusing a child. I mean, the question is, what has become of conscience? Why people would steal and what? Why a fellow would see a little old lady taking a dollar or two out of her purse and knock her down and on the floor, on the ground, floor her as it were, to get her purse with $1 or $2. I mean, what's going on here? What happened to a man's conscience when he could bottomize another man and be referring to another man as, this is my husband? We have the conscience in that. So these religious leaders, they have no, their consciences are sealed with that iron, why they persist in doing what they very well know is wrong.
You have Jim Reeves music.
I have
This
some
was some
music.
Have you ever listened to the one long time ago in Bethlehem? So the Holy Bible.
But everybody
said,
know that song.
Mary's boy child Jesus Christ was born, and so the Holy Bible said, Mary's boy child Jesus Christ was born.
So the Holy Bible says.
Yeah. So I'm telling you,
I tell you the truth. No, wait. Whichever day Christ was born will be Christmas Day. Let's accept that.
Okay.
Whichever day, whether it be the 1st of January, the 10th of June, or the 5th of August.
That would be Christ's birthday, not Christmas Day.
That would be the birthday of Christ. What is it, Christmas Day?
Yeah.
You say
No,
Christmas
sorry,
Day.
that would be the birthday of Christ.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be Christmas Day. But the point is, we know it is not December the 25th.
I'm telling you, somebody, I hear you singing them too. Numerous songs you play at around this time of year.
You hear me singing what?
Long time ago. Long time.
No, you don't even
No,
think
no, well,
And
he
you-
already
and,
said
and
he
by the
was
way,
last, so now he's found.
the song that I sing are songs that could be applied to any time of the year. You also aware that I play them all during the year.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
But
but carry on. The story
let
too.
the
You were
audience know.
born on Christmas Day.
Let the audience know that this man here, I play the music, the one that I like, all
year,
through
all through
the year.
Yeah.
And I did it when I was in Cuba, I did it when I was studying, I did it in Romania, I did it in Mexico. Wherever I went, I
Right now,
played them all during the year.
You know,
Because I am convinced that Christ could have been born in any month of the year, except December. But I play them all during the year because some of them, they make sense, eh? Some of them. Not all of them.
Benjamin Prentice and the Gospel Themes of Joy.
But
The mystery in
Yeah.
Christ.
let me say this. Christ was born into the month of Tishri. The month of Tishri is the month between September and October. How we know this? In Chronicles 24 spoke about David setting out for the whole annual priestly service. And Zacharias was on the 8th service called Abijah. So the Bible tells you that when the story came about the angel saying whatever to Mary and the Elizabeth issue and whatever, that John the Baptist was 6 months older than Christ, right? So if you calculate the time of Abijah, if you calculate that was around like March. Matter of fact, there are some people before all of this Christmas come the way it is, used to celebrate Christ's birthday the 25th of March. Bet you didn't know that. Right. So they used to celebrate the birthday of Christ the 25th of March. But what happened is that the birth of John the Baptist would have been around March. And then Christ is 6 months after John the Baptist. When you study the order of the priestly
Yeah, but
order.
not only that, in the New Testament as well, when he speaks about Elizabeth being
Right,
spoken to and then Mary being spoken to,
right.
it
So-
makes it clear it was 6 months later.
But here the next thing. Within the structure of the feast that God told us to do through your generations, the feast of the Passover, the feast of unleavened bread, which is Passover,
Yes.
which is now covered with the Easter thing.
Mm-hmm.
Easter is clearly pagan,
Right.
and Passover is clearly biblical. The Passover is very important because it foreshadowed the coming of the Messiah. It talk about the pure lamb or the pure goat, unblemished and what's not, that representing Christ. Now, so the Almighty basically put that in place and even still tell us to do these feasts because he said, all of you come, these 3 feasts, the feast of Passover, and then 50 days after the feast of unleavened bread, you have what you call the feast of weeks. The word for weeks in Greek is Pentecostus. So when they translate the Bible into English, we see the word now Pentecost in the Bible, which is really the Feast of Weeks, which is 50 days, because Pentecostus means the 50th. That was the second feast, and that feast had to do with harvesting. Some might mention about first fruits and different things and so on, which is also a foreshadowing of the Messiah to come. Then the Feast of Tabernacles, which was the final feast that we were called to. It's not the final feast in the book, but it's the final feast that we were called to. Tabernacle simply mean to dwell with.
Coming together.
Not just coming together. It's like it's showing you that Christ is going to come and dwell with us.
Mhm.
Right? And so when you go back to Isaiah, them and he talk about he shall be called Emmanuel and the different things, God and out and these different things.
God with us.
The Feast and Tabernacle was foreshadowing the time to come. So the Feast of Tabernacle is in the same month of Tishri. So everything line up perfectly
Yeah.
to see that the Messiah was born in Tishri, which this the time he came to tabernacle with us. He was and then his crucifixion was in the time of the Passover. That's when he left us. But in between that, you have the Pentecost, which is Feast of Weeks, which is talking about like harvesting and the first fruit. As the book says, he was the first fruit basically of the Most
Remember,
High.
God, I am my platform is that the number of church leaders are aware of this.
You think so?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Not all of them for sure, because some people just get up and call themselves pastor. Well, what qualifies them to call themselves pastor? But I believe that some persons, especially those who have been trained, who go into overseas to study theology, you want to say they didn't do any research on their own?
Sometimes I wonder about that. But Blake, I mean, you listen them too. I listen them.
This is why I'm concerned, because
So,
I listen to them right
but
and
we're in
I'm
the
concerned.
based on what I just said there, you ever heard that from any pastor?
Exactly, this is the point. Well, not from the mainstream churches. I heard it
You
from the Assembly of Yahweh.
okay. So you would hear things similar to, you would hear those things from the churches that are not so much connected to these,
So-called mainstream.
right?
Yeah.
And that is good because
I believe what he's saying is right. I believe some of them are aware.
you believe some of
But
them
yeah,
are
but
aware.
like I said, when you're steeped in tradition, everybody, you don't want to break away from certain practices because it goes against the norms
Yeah,
of
but
society.
why you think these fellas would be there willfully,
I've spoken to
willfully
pastors
committing
about
sin?
certain truths, certain things, and so. And I'm not gonna mention anybody's name, but they know, like you said, they study. They've been to theological seminary and so on. They know things, but it's hard to break away from.
So they prefer to abide by tradition than serve the true and mighty God.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
So maybe it is that. Maybe it is then that if they do know, it don't. And when I said do know, meaning that they heard of it, don't necessarily mean they believe it. You see? So because if they did believe it, they would come back and teach it.
One would think.
Well, I would
So
want
again,
to
I'm
think-
asking about conscience.
right. Because okay, let's look at it. We're talking about the Christmas, but all those feasts you heard me mention. Which church does teach about these feasts outside of what Blake mentioned about the Church of Yahweh? The church you ever go to does teach that?
we're not big on feasts.
Okay. But even though the Bible calls us to, the Bible itself was so strict with that. They said three times in the year, the men supposed to appear before the Lord. In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Passover, the Feast of Weeks, which I call Pentecost, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Right now, yesterday started the Feast of Dedication, which is called Hanukkah. Hanukkah means dedication. And that is an 8-day feast. It's going to go till the 22nd of December. This is something
So
that
you're
the Jewish
observing that?
community.
Are you observing that?
Observing is more of
Practicing?
acknowledging and reading about it and being
Practicing it?
more familiar.
You're practicing it?
Yes, practicing it is just practicing it is basically to read it, it's like you in church, what you call church, like you saying things and so on. Let me not say it like that, see, because church is something else.
But my concern is the mechanical repetition of these behaviors when Christ himself advises or admonishes that we do not follow the traditions of men. And yet we find that Christmas is the biggest thing on the calendar. And there's no end to it. There's no end in sight, because as I said earlier, I think that Jesus Christ will return to the earth. Because, I mean, for those who don't believe that, I would like to ask them, how do they see things culminating if man were to, if Jesus Christ did not exist? Now, Voltaire argued that if God didn't exist, we would have to invent him, right? It would be necessary to invent God because we need a God. So, Christ is going to return, I believe, and find his followers in these kinds of behaviors. What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? Is Christ going to say, man, but we just right, it's tradition, so enter into my everlasting kingdom of truth and righteousness. All they did so much folly for all these years because you were simply following tradition. I can't see Almighty God in fairness and justice, a God of justice and fairness, doing that when it is clearly stated in His Word. Some say it's full of inaccuracies and errors, but it is clearly stated in the Bible that they accept. These same people who accept it as His Word, the infallible Word of God, that these things cannot be, that you're not supposed to do these things.
But Blake, as you
What's going on?
you said it, God is not a Santa Claus. The God of the Bible is a God that don't play.
Exactly.
Right? And so this is why Christ now said that in that day, many shall come and say to me, Master, we have even cast out demons in your name.
Yeah.
We have done many great miracles in your name.
Yeah,
And
that's
he said-
Christmas tree.
Right. So, and he said, he gone, mind you, They ain't even gone as far as, imagine these are people who are saying they are doing things that maybe Dwight would validate as righteous and so on. But then he said, he shall say to them, ye workers of iniquity.
Depends from me.
But let me stick on iniquity for a little bit. As an educator, iniquity also mean unfair, unjust, right?
Yeah, unfairness, injustice.
Injustice.
But it also means doing wrong. It also means wrongdoing.
Well, let me don't go so heavy on the wrongdoing. Let me just stay on, it's not just.
So I think that what the government is doing right now, for example, with respect to the SSC, is iniquitous.
Okay.
Respect to what?
The SSC and a lot of other things, that it's iniquitous and pernicious. And I want to hear what the Prime Minister is going to say tomorrow. Because what he said might very well amount to iniquity.
So if the point I'm getting at is that if the people continually do things that is basically based on man-made traditions and do not do the things that God called them to do, that in itself is iniquity. A matter of fact,
Yes, definitely.
realize a lot of Christians, so, and Western Christian, I must be specific, talk about Antichrist. The word Antichrist was never used really in referencing a satanic being, Antichrist was used to reference people who are against Christ. The word Antichrist appears 0 times in the book of Revelation. Right? But yet you hear the same people, and I'm talking about these people with the Christmas tree, and who with the Easter, and who with the Whit Monday, and who even go as far as to want to even pull Halloween in the church and different things. These are the ones who talk about Antichrist as if Antichrist is a satanic figure, then realizing you yourself being opposing Christ with your ways, your behavior, your so-called worship, because to decorate a tree and to do all the things they do with the tree it's a form of worship and anti-Christ.
Definitely.
Because worship means to adore.
Yeah.
You check? To admire greatly. And people think to worship means you got to go kneel on. No. It just means that once you give that adoration to something.
Well, nowadays, Christians hardly kneel, Many churches, they don't ask, they hardly ask if they
I don't know what they do now.
All they do is ask them to stand. Everything is stand.
Yeah.
So, and I as I read in the Bible, 99, if not 100% of the time, when folks wanted to pray, they knelt to pray. Right. The Bible is clear on that. Right. They knelt to pray. I find that churches don't ask people to kneel anymore. I remember one pastor who built a big church. I asked him, "How is it you don't have an altar at the what we normally refer to as the altar place where you go up to the front of the church and kneel down and pray? You remember that, right? Every church had that. This big church that he built doesn't have one. In other words, it's no longer important. It's no longer important. Just stay where you are and pay. Stay where you are and give me the money."
There's so many things. There's so many things wrong with what the Western Christian
wrong with so many things. Wrong with so many things.
That Christmas is only a small, minute part of it, because when you check the whole annual calendar of what these people do, I mean, look at the idea that I'll give you all this to him. Check out on your own. The next 5 Christian persons you meet, ask them if they ever been interested in doing any of the feasts that God called them to do. And if they say no, they're going to more than likely tell you, well, Jesus this and Jesus that. But ask them how many days you observe based on what the UN say you should observe. Father's Day, Mother's Day, the day of the child, the day of the girl. All these days we observe religiously every year. But to just simply take 7 days to just eat unleavened bread and to let that day build up to say, well, okay, this is based on Christ. Now, these are the same people who tell you Christ died for these things, but still go back into the same area and tell you should pay tithes, use 10% of your money to pay the church. And this only came back 600 years after Christ left the earth. Because there is actually no verse in the New Testament to show that the apostles or their disciples had any dealings with tithes.
Exactly, not
because
one.
Tithes finished with Christ.
Not one.
Because Christ became the new high priest. Because Paul even said it. The Levites were picked and assigned to take tithes of the people. these pastors now pretending to be Levites.
Yeah, well, I make the point that some churches they only refer to the verse Malachi chapter 3, verse 8, I think it is.
And I love to discuss
Not
that.
only, and they refer to support their case about tithing. They not only refer to the book of Malachi, but to just that verse, as if nothing else in Malachi is important.
But the boss condemn what they do.
Nothing else, I know, but I'm saying, I make the point that if there's been nothing else, they have never referred to any other verse in the book of Malachi except that one about bringing all the tithe into the storehouse. And it is totally out of context.
And that's like the last book that talk about tithes anyway.
Right, but listen, because we'll be out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I remain concerned that this matter of following tradition according to Dwight and doing all kinds of things at Christmas time is wrong and bad. I mean, imagine that folks engage in so much glutton at Christmas time, where they overeat and they satiate themselves and they eat and drink much more than they normally would. They put on weight, as it were. They gluttonize themselves. And we're saying that's a good way to celebrate the birthday, even if it were in December. And we were asked to celebrate it. That's a proper way to celebrate the birthday of Jesus Christ. But so many church leaders are silent. Not only are they silent on this matter, they actively promote the observance of December the 25th as the birthday of Jesus Christ in ways that I am convinced that Jesus Christ himself frowns on. Thank you very much for listening. Those are my last words. See you again in 2 weeks' time. Brothers, your last words?
I would like to say that the Bible was very clear that when the children of God, keep disobeying, it said that women shall rule over them and children shall oppress them. We see today that most of the churches that we have visited so far, and even those we have not visited yet, that it seemed to be mostly women keeping up those churches.
And even at the international level, more and more countries are being run by women now. Japan being the latest major country to have a female first prime minister, female prime minister in the world, in their history, a woman. Many major countries are now being run, have been run or are being run by women.
Yeah. So these are the signs show you that women shall rule over them and children shall oppress them. One of the things I mean, this is not within the topic, but a youngster said to me today while driving to do some work that he's kind of happy that the government is paying the youngsters them. He's not a part of it to not basically to unalive each other. And I tell him, you think that's a good thing? He said, yeah. I said, I think it's a kind of strange thing. He said, yeah, but hey God, saying he's got the highest percentage of people killing. I said, brother, look, the people them are giving you a calculation based on ratio and different things and so on. I said, go ahead and go to Google now and ask Google about the countries like Trinidad and Jamaica, how many persons were killed by gun violence in just call it year 2023. And when you see the thousands of people that were killed, I said the most people died in St. Kitts from gun violence is 34. So we're nowhere, we don't even have the population to support that kind of conversation there. But yet, this is the thinking that they're having because somehow the politicians like to push some of these conversations to keep people mind in a certain way. And it's quite troubling. So I say that to say that the Christian community too have this mindset and they push it also to the youths. And then the youths come up and be just like them and even worse because they're not trying to tell them to study the Bible, which Paul said, study and show yourself approved. They're not studying, they're not practicing, they're just inventing their own God and concept of the Bible. And this is what we're seeing. So we give thanks for the listeners.
But based on what I'm hearing, I think maybe we just need a new calendar. A calendar, we set a set of things. 25th of December is no longer on the calendar as Christmas Day. Take out that, put in the feast that you mentioned about, and we may have a new order of things. But
In the Bible,
if we are to remain, we keep what we have, expect no change.
I don't expect any change. All right, people, good night. We give thanks.